This is the Select Board meeting for September 9th, 2024. And the agenda items are changes to the published agenda. Lisa, anything?
Nope.
Nothing here. Minutes of the August 12th Select Board meeting. Yeah, Lisa?
I move that we accept them as written.
I've read through them. I see no changes. We'll declare them accepted as printed and published. There is one date. I've got on here August 12th. It was really August 5th. Treasurer's report. You have one of those, Lisa?
I do.
You want to give it?
I will take some help with this, for sure. What do we want to give them?
Start right here.
Okay.
Just the bottom numbers
Okay.
under the
Okay. So the year-to-date is 272, 354.08.
expenses.
And the expenditures are 209, 853.56.
Here's your balance in your checkbook.
And our balance as of 8/31/24 is 340, 371.65.
Delinquent taxes. Next page. Getting her broke in for the treasurer's job.
I know, rough. Delinquent taxes is 49,108.73 cents.
And that is the town portion. For 22 and 23. Any questions? Current taxes came in, Lisa reported 272. Of that, 198,000 were current taxes coming in somewhat early, which is a good thing. I would mention that we have received all of our state aid money for highways for this fiscal year through June 30th, 2025. I'm not sure, or not up to date on what prompted that, but the state sent us all three payments for third quarter, fourth quarter, first quarter, and second quarter of 25, one right after another. So we've got all the money of $124,677 that we're going to get for state aid to highways. I move we approve.
I'll second.
Done. Action items. Route 106 Bridge Status Report. Are you ready?
I'm trying to sign into the Zoom link and it's taking a minute, so not quite. Give me a sec.
Take your time. While he's getting ready, I'll move down to item C, the FEMA update. This is short and sweet, but just to give you an update as to where we stand. To date, we have submitted $1,219,779.79 in claims to FEMA. To date, we have received $112,250.05. There are still three large items out there that total a little over $1 million. That is the Archer Bridge, Tyson Road, and the Grasshopper Culvert. Those three by themselves are a little bit over $1 million. And they're working on the Archer Bridge project right now. So that's where we stand. A lot of money paid out, not a lot of money coming back. It'll come, I hope. The FEMA meetings are now at a point where they are coming back and asking a ton of questions on every meeting and every project. And the more expensive the projects are, the more questions they seem to have, obviously. The first 5 or 6 projects slid through pretty quietly, but they were small items ranging from $7,800 to $25,000. Now we're talking 453, 298, and 320,000. So they're looking at those a little closer than they did the other ones, as you can imagine. But it's still a good conversation.
Do you know if there's a password to the Zoom? Because the Zoom link on the agenda is like a dead link.
Is there something else we can move on to?
I don't
What?
Is there something else we can move on to?
understand why it wouldn't
Emergency watershed.
connect.
Let me know when you're ready. I'm gonna get the rest of the agenda done.
Okay, that's totally fine. I apologize for that. I don't
Please don't.
understand.
The Emergency Watershed Protection Program, EWP as it's known, as you've seen printed probably. Lisa and I have a meeting scheduled with the state individuals for next, well, it's not scheduled, it's going to be scheduled tomorrow, but they've all agreed to next Tuesday, the 17th, 9:30 at the Agony Hill Bridge. We will work up Millbrook from there to the other 3 sites beyond Agony Hill. The bidders will be invited to come to that meeting. It is a bidders meeting, not an EWP meeting, but they're there to tell the bidders what they expect to be done. And there are 5 or 6 bidders that we're going to invite to the meeting. Hopefully, most of them will show up, or at least 3 of them will show up. So that is scheduled for next Tuesday at 9:30.
Purpose?
No, the problem is it's connecting to the Zoom like state meeting minute or meeting app, and it won't allow me to connect to the browser app. And it keeps asking for a passcode. Was it 7250?
You're looking for the password for the Wi-Fi?
No, it's asking for a Zoom password.
Try to check browser, like use Chrome or something like that,
I am on Chrome.
or Safari or just a different one.
I will try that.
Yeah, there's no password. I can, maybe what I'll do is I'll email you a link and just click on that.
If you can do that, sure. I typed the link in. I've clicked on the select board meeting link. That didn't do anything, but the typing in seemed to work, but it's not letting me in. It's not good.
Technology.
Do you see that, what it's doing?
Yeah.
Is this how fast the bridge is gonna get built?
No,
It's a cheap shot.
Now. Now.
Can he email it to you? On yours?
Yeah. This is a good, I don't actually have.
Is it possible?
I only have the link. You have the URL. Somebody mentioned in the chat that it was on the front porch, and that's how they got in.
Is it possible to share from your computer
Yes.
the presentation?
Yes,
Then we should be able to do it that
you
way.
can just
That'd
email.
probably be quicker.
Email it, or you want it on a zip
Uh,
zip drive? I don't know if it's gonna email very well.
Too big of a file?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, then it's,
And then you would just share your screen.
yeah, and then you wanna, you're gonna have to control it.
Unless you wanna just put in the,
Sounds like the front porch.
we have a clicker if you just can plug a clicker in too.
I said, sounds like the front porch.
Okay. Oh,
So we have our own.
There it is.
Wonder what the reason was for that. Hey,
Let's see. I was clicking through one. It's true.
okay,
Alright, so I think we should be good.
This is good. No, it sounds good.
Alright. Sorry about that. Thanks for the help there. Technology is never easy. Anyways, we will get started. This is the Reading ERP 23 -1 for N404 project for Bridge 12 on Route 106. I'm Corey Brown, the V-Trans project manager for the project. I brought with me Fiona Barrows, she's the structures lead design engineer on it, and then I've brought Jeff DeGraff, he is the hydraulics project engineer. So our agenda for the day is we're gonna provide an update to the project development and where we're at. We're gonna discuss the existing conditions and an overview of the design criteria. We're gonna talk about a hydraulic analysis and what we've done to kind of analyze what the current structure is and how the hydraulics are handled at it, as well as a future state, and try to mimic the 2023 flood event. We're gonna talk about our proposed design, criteria, and plans. Then we'll talk about a traffic management plan and how we plan to handle traffic during the construction of the bridge. And then we'll outline where we're at in the project schedule and timeline, and then provide an opportunity to ask any questions. So here's a map of Bridge 12 on 106. North of the bridge is the Reading Elementary School. South of the bridge is the Hall Art Foundation. As you can see, the river was a waterfall upstream of the structure, and then fields directly downstream of the structure. This is just kind of a schematic of a bridge. We're going to have some terminology that you might not be familiar with. So just if you hear some of these terms, kind of an explanation. So the bridge is made up of kind of two component structures. There's a superstructure that entails the deck, a surface treatment, which is usually pavement or a bare deck surface, as well as the girders that support it, or beams. And then there's bridge railing on top of that, and also a bearing device that helps the bridge move. And all that is part of the superstructure. And then that's supported by a substructure, which is a typical kind of concrete foundation, either supported by a spread footing or sometimes is a deep foundation with piles driven to bedrock. And then you'll see a couple other terms. Wing walls connect to the foundation and help support the fill and the roadway. And then stem footing is just components of an abutment or the substructure. Bridge 12, this is looking north over the bridge towards the Reading Elementary School, which would be on the right. To the left is the Hall Art Foundation, and upstream to the left is the waterfall. It is classified as a major collector. It's owned by the state of Vermont. It's a 52 single span on rolled beams, and it was constructed in 1940, but it is believed that the laid up stone wall that the abutment sits on was older than that, so we're not exactly sure the age of that. Existing conditions, this bridge is on a 2-year inspection frequency. It was last fully inspected in June of 2023, right before the flooding event of July. The deck, superstructure, and substructure all rate out as a 6, which is satisfactory. We do understand that post-flood event, it's likely some of these ratings may have decreased, but not to a level that they deemed a full inspection or a decrease in inspection frequency to occur. So they're okay waiting until 2025 for their next full inspection. Some existing conditions. Here's the deck. On the lower left, you can see at the fascia outside edge of the deck, you have exposed rebar and spalling concrete. And then on the top surface of the structure, the concrete curb is in pretty rough shape, as well as I believe one of the railings is definitely tilted. Deck joints, they're not in the worst condition, but they are deteriorating, so they will need some repair, as well as there's potholes forming along the deck surface, and then also on the approaches. The superstructure, the steel beams are corroding. They're not the worst, but they are definitely corroding, and they have some section loss, in particular the outside beams, most likely due to just runoff and salt water, as well as there's some issues and deterioration of the abutment or the bearings where the beams sit on. Substructure, here you can see the beam coming into the substructure, which is supported on some laid up stone that is in some instances missing. More of the voids are kind of outside the plane of the bridge and in the wing wall areas, but certainly a cause for concern that there's some stone that has been washed away. I'm going to turn over to Jeff to talk about some hydraulics.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Before I start this, I know that you guys understand what occurred during the July 2023 event. The whole purpose of this presentation is just to show the mechanics that took place and the reasons why the flooding occurred. Oops. Looks like it went. Dun dun dun.
Let's do that again.
We'll just go through it.
Don't do it too many times, I think it will then jump way ahead.
Okay.
I can manually do it.
Okay. Let's do that. I'll just tell you next slide. Keep going. Once it says sediment and slope, right? Go back one. Right here. All right, now, let's see if I can. So, what I'm showing you in this video is just a flume with sediment in it. And what I want to show is when you start to run the sediment flume, you're going to get a whole bunch of deposition upstream or at the initial source of the material on a flat bed. But once you start steepening the slope, you're going to start to see what happens with the sediment transport. Hopefully it works. You just hit the, yep, right here, we're good. So over time, what you're going to see is all the deposited sediment material start to erode away because we're increasing the slope of the bed. And then over time, you're going to see the sediment wash out. And I just noted with the flat line, the initial slope of the original flume. Now we're going to go on to the next, so can you hit the next slide, please? Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at how a bridge impacts the sediment transport capacity on a very flat slope. And hopefully this works. Can you just hit the arrow again? So in here, good thing I have everything timed, by the way. In here, I'm just going to show what the initial water surface elevation is. Water surface elevation is the top of the water. The block right there denotes the bridge, sediment introduced to the system, and you start seeing similar to what happened before, you get deposition upstream near the source. But what happens over time is the sediment starts to raise, and you also get a vertical force, and you get sediment washing through the bridge here. within this simulation or this flow experiment, they allowed the bridge to be overtopped, which means water is allowed to go over the bridge. But you can see that in a typical situation, if you have a straight channel, sediment will be washed out through the bridge. Next slide, please. And then just hit the next button. There you go. So here, what I'm showing is a transition from a steep to a flatter slope. You can think of sediment as bowling balls or marbles. When you go from a very steep slope to a very flat slope or a flatter slope, what do you expect to happen on the flatter slope? Everything's going to start to slow down and everything's going to start to pile up at some point. You can think of this as the bridge scenario as we had before. Next slide. So what we did was we developed a hydraulic model. A hydraulic model is just a mathematical representation of a flow situation. The model solves sediment transport and hydraulic equations through an algorithm and a code. We used LiDAR, survey, and aerial photography, as well as a site visit. Some of you in this room have seen me walk around. And what I was doing was I was informing the information gaps from our survey, LiDAR, and aerial photography to inform the model further of what could occur. So what did we model? We modeled a 24-hour, 100-year event using a USDA design storm event, the SES Type 2 hydrograph, if anyone's in this room is privy to that type of information. We modeled the existing conditions as well with a movable bed. Typical water or hydraulic models model a fixed bed, meaning the riverbed does not move with time and does not account for sediment. Most of all the FEMA maps that you see and that are reported assume a fixed, unmovable bed, no sediment. We also performed a hypothetical model which showed no difference in results where we raised the bridge 5 feet in the air, 5 feet of what you see now, without changing anything to the downstream slope or upstream slope. And we also incorporated a 70-foot wide bridge to increase the hydraulic capacity and realign the abutment so it's more aligned with the flow. Next slide, please. So here, if you just hit we're going to play a movie, hopefully it works. What we're showing here are the results of these existing conditions with a movable bed. And based on what I've talked to residents out in the field, this represents what occurred from where the water went. If you were to model this without a movable bed, you would not get these results. I just want to make that very clear. You would not get any especially where the falls location is. You got a lot of spread upstream at the falls, which then bypassed the channel and started to flood people to the north as well as the south. Next slide. This is just to show where the deposition occurs, where all the sediment occurs. And then hit the not play, but hit the next. Oops, go back one, no worries.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll start on its own.
I'm gonna have to go back one more and then try it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is showing where all the sediment deposited. And what was interesting about this model that we had heavy deposition upstream and through the bridge itself, as well as we had that deposited material on the southwest portion of Vermont, near Vermont 106 in that field. So the model showing that it's encapsulating real world conditions to some extent. Is it going to be exactly the same? No, because many of us may think that all models are right, but actually all models are wrong, but some are useful. It's a famous quote by a statistician. But what this is showing here is that we're getting very close to what's happening in the real world. This is a semi-calibrated model, which means that we're matching real world conditions. So the next slide, please. This is just to show the deposition that occurred downstream of the falls. If you hit the play next button. Yep, here we are. So what we're showing is with the blue line is the water surface elevation, and then the brown dash line is the water or the bed elevation moving over time. So you're just getting a lot of stacked material downstream of the falls. And what the model predicted was that there's about 10 feet of deposited material right at the falls, which means that the channel was just chock full and flat at that section. And that's what kind of the model showed everywhere upstream of the bridge, that the model was fully packed up to the banks. And that's what this shows here. Next slide. And then hopefully, I'll just draw a line. Can you hit the next, or the over button? So what I'm gonna show in this section right here, in a couple slides before, I didn't denote this, but we all know that nice meander bend downstream, right? When I say downstream bend, that's where that nice meandering downstream bend is before it starts to become a straight channel again. So I want to make that clear. We also denote where the falls is and what the upstream slope appears to look like based on a LiDAR information. So if you hit the next, the over button for me, if we were to transpose that slope downstream, what would need to occur in order to mimic similar sediment transport conditions as the upstream slope, we would need to dredge the channel by approximately 40 feet at that downstream bend. We have a slope problem here. I'm not saying the bridge is the cause of it. I'm not saying the bridge is helpful. But what I am saying is there's a slope problem from the upstream to downstream slope. And that's the reason why material is stacking here. Again, I did say that we modeled a condition, a hypothetical condition, if we raised the road 5 feet at the bridge. It did not help the situation. What you would do there is cause a dam, and you might actually cause more flooding issues upstream.
Could you say that again, please?
I raised the bridge.
Yeah.
Think if we were taking the bridge down, we're raising that additional 5 feet in the air, and the road's getting raised 5 feet,
Well,
hypothetically.
So hypothetically, you could go down as well.
You could go down, if we go down, you would have to go 40 feet at the downstream bend to mimic that slope,
40 feet into the bed itself.
straight down. Because it's a slope issue. You're going from steep to a milder slope.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
It's all good.
Did you do any models that show what happens at that bridge opening when it fills with rocks, boulders, and trees as opposed to sediment?
No model has that capability.
Well, that's what clogged the bridge at night, one was sediment.
Yeah, so this has the only sediment. Woody debris is not included in this model. If you want to do a woody debris model, you would also have to make a lot of assumptions and put together a more advanced model in order to show that. So what?
Well, that's what caused that's what turned it from a bridge to a dam. was the rocks and
Absolutely.
trees.
Absolutely. So what I did was I also compared the water surface elevations from this model to Irene's model, to what actually occurred in Irene. I was a foot low, and one of the reasons why I'm a foot low in water surface elevations is because when the woody debris comes down, it would clog the bridge. In addition, if you were to incorporate that woody debris artificially in the model, then the water surface elevations would most likely match. It's an inferred. You have to, from a modeler standpoint, you have to infer that scenario. You can't put woody debris in these models and let it float down the river.
Well, that's what happened.
I understand that's what happened, but that's what we're showing here is the sediment problem. The woody debris is going to come because of bank erosion upstream. That's a given. So what we try to account for in most of our bridges is something called freeboard, which is the distance from the low beam elevation to the water surface elevation to allow for better debris passage. Here we have two conditions that are issues, a low slope as well as a very shallow road. If we were to raise the road, we might be causing dams on properties.
So move the bridge
Where?
downstream.
But the roadway, we need to be able to get cars and
Move the road.
vehicles. Well, that gets into a whole right-of-way issue, you're buying properties.
Well, I don't think any of the butters are too happy with the current situation.
No, I agree.
Sounds like you're leading down a path that says there's really not a good fix for this problem.
Yeah, and truthfully, there's a lot of pieces that go into this, and I think that is what we're trying to show is that, the bridge doesn't necessarily solve the general flooding of the area. And by modeling 5 feet, if we raise the roadway 5 feet, all the adjacent properties would not be able to access that road because you'd have a driveway like that and the roadway would be above their front door. So there's not a clear-cut, foolproof solution here, unfortunately.
Move the bridge.
Yeah, I just don't see how that would be a reasonable, you'd still need to get traffic on 106 somewhere, right? You'd have to.
Yeah, you'd have to rewrite the road, but at least I'll talk to the butters at some point. Maybe they're in favor, maybe they're not. I'm not in the butter, so.
I will say this: if you move The bridge is not the cause of the problem, it's the slope of the
So you
river.
can't change the slope, so move the bridge, I mean, you don't.
But if you got rid of the bridge, you just have an open channel that will then stack up
Absolutely.
material and then eventually overtop its banks.
Well, you want it a dam though,
Correct.
and that's what caused the river to jump both sides of
Yeah.
the bridge and wipe out the road.
But I
and
think
flood
you
adjacent properties.
theoretically would have a dam eventually when enough sediment filled in the channel up to the roadway. And, go ahead.
Sarah Koblenski, up in South Reading, up above all of this.
Okay,
I'm not a scientist, so I need some help here.
sure.
So you're looking at, on this, you're hypothesizing 40 feet
Yes.
at one end, but what is the slope? I can't see it.
Yep,
And
so,
so what is the depth of dredging at the road end?
at the road end, so what's occurring here is that at the road end, it would be minimal dredging. Because we're going further and further away from the bridge, you're dropping 1 foot over 39 feet. And from the bridge to the downstream falls area, we're looking at 2,500 feet.
So it's 2,500 feet, 40 feet.
So the downstream bend is approximately right before, or right after that debris field that you can see from 106.
Yep, if we go back 2 slides, yeah, there's a lot of animations in here. Go one more back. Yep, the downstream bend is denoted on this slide right here. So it's about 2,500 feet downstream of the bridge. And I'm not saying dredge it 40 feet and stop right there. You would have to dredge a significant portion of the river further downstream because it's a slope problem.
So I know you're bridge engineers and everything, but we've been like talking this issue like up here. And can you say that there's no solution to this? Or is there a solution?
There are
So the
yes.
solution from a state asset, we are proposing a replacement structure that would withstand future flooding events, that would improve hydraulics at this site. However, it will not solve the overall arching issue of a flood. Unfortunately, it's a village situation where it's built in a floodplain directly downstream of a waterfall. So it's not a matter of an easy solution. We're looking at it from a standpoint that we want a resilient structure, but we can only design to a certain hydraulic event, and there's going to be events that potentially we just realistically can't design all bridges to withstand a 1,000-year flood event. Do you mind if we maybe answer the questions at the end, and you can at least see kind of our proposed design, and it may not make you feel any more comfortable, but maybe it will. So, sorry, Deanna, put you on the spot now.
It's okay.
Oh, at least it's working for you. She has the touch. You guys are good hands.
All right, so to get back to the project as a whole, on top of the consideration of hydraulic clearance and hydraulic capacity, other considerations that we take into account for bridge design would be the traffic volumes, the hourly, the annual, the percent trucks that are on the roadway, the design speed of the road, the geometric design of the road, so in this case the vertical clearance since it's straight horizontally, and bridge width standards. And we also consider the right-of-way that may be needed, utility relocation that may be needed, the adjacent property owners that will be impacted, and historically sensitive properties, and in this case, the nearby elementary school. Alternatives that we considered, first of all, no action. So we would assume that additional maintenance would probably be needed within the next 10 years based on the existing pictures that you saw earlier. A rehabilitation, which would include repair of any spalling concrete, replacing the missing stone in the abutments, and replacement of the bridge joints at the end of the bridges, and a new sidewalk and curbs poured. This would probably give us a bridge with a 30-year design life. And then an entire superstructure replacement, which would be new girders, new bearings, new concrete deck, new bridge rail and bridge joints at the end. This would address the maintenance issues the curb spalling, the poor joints. It would not be new abutments. This would be about a 40-year design life, or a full bridge replacement, which would be the substructure and the superstructure and some approach roadway work, which would give us approximately a 70-year design life. We're proposing a full bridge replacement. I'll show you more pictures, but it would be a longer span with a shallower superstructure. So we would increase the hydraulic capacity and the ability for conveyance. It would be a concrete deck on galvanized steel beams. And the bridge would be wider, so it would still have the 11-foot lanes like the current bridge, but we would have 2 4-foot shoulders on both, 1 4-foot shoulder on both sides, instead of the 4-foot wide sidewalk. And we would meet geometric criteria, so we would increase the sight distance. Right now, there's poor sight distance over the bridge, but it would be increased so that cars could see other cars and pedestrians in the roadway better. And we would make sure there's a 2% roadway crown and vertical curve to promote runoff of water. The superstructure would be sitting on integral abutments, so it's kind of like a pile cap with piles that go down to bedrock, so it would be flood resilient in that case. We would need some right-of-way, and there would be a minor utility relocation. We'd have a design life of 75 years, like I said before, and our anticipated construction would be in summer of 2026. So this is a picture of another bridge that would look really similar to what we would plan to construct. We would go with what we call a combination rail, so it's concrete and steel guardrail on the bridge, and we would have galvanized steel girders, and then that would sit on, these are deep abutments, but you really only see the top of the abutment where it sits on it, and those are armored with stone fill. And this is a proposed typical section, so if you were standing on the bridge and it was cut and you just see the end of the bridge, the lower one is the proposed and the upper one is the existing. So you can see the lane widths are the same, but the shoulders are wider, so there's a little bit more width to this bridge. Also in this picture you can see the girders or the beams underneath the concrete deck. The lower, which is the proposed, we would anticipate they'd be shallower. We could potentially get them shallower by up to almost 10 inches. However, we haven't run the final design yet, but we would get them as shallow as we possibly could to increase the hydraulic capacity. This is a layout view, so this is looking from the top down. To the left is the Hall Art Foundation, and to the right would be the elementary school. The orange outline is approximately the outline of the existing bridge, and the green outline is the outline of the new bridge. So you can see that it would be longer by approximately 10 feet on the northern end of the bridge. So that would be our increase in hydraulic area. Also, you can see what we call the skew, which would be the angle between the abutments and the roadway, is slightly more angled, and it's to match the angle of the stream, so that will increase conveyance as well. And then we would use stone fill to tie into the banks so that there wouldn't be a chunk of bank in front of the abutment after we push it back. This is a profile section, so kind of looking at the stream, looking upstream at the bridge. And on the right hand side, so the dashed line that you can see in there is the existing survey. And you can see that our new abutment would be pushed back about 10 feet. You can also see on the right side, which is the side toward the elementary school, the new roadway is about a foot higher, and that's the increased sight distance. So we're fixing that problem. So that was our plan for the bridge. Then we take into consideration what are we going to do with traffic during the bridge construction. So 3 options: temporary bridge, or phased construction, or a road closure with an off-site detour, and we would utilize accelerated bridge construction techniques. I'll go through each of those. So this is what we considered for a temporary bridge layout. We had it on the downstream side to avoid the older, most likely historical wall on the upstream side. But as you can see on both ends, this would be a single lane alternating traffic, so traffic would be alternated with a traffic signal. You can see that it imposes on the buildings on both sides of the river and the driveways, and it would also be really close to construction during the construction happening. So we ruled this option out. We also considered phased construction, which would mean, again, one lane of traffic would be on one half of the bridge, alternating with a traffic light while half the bridge was being replaced. Then we would swap traffic over to the new half while the other half was being replaced, and then we would connect the two sides together. So like it says, it would be completed in 2 phases. Again, this would put cars in really close proximity to construction workers and the construction. So it just adds less, it just decreases safety, and it's the longest duration, and it would be the highest cost option. So we also ruled that out. And our plan would be to do a road closure with a detour, which would be signed by the state. We anticipate that the closure would be 4 weeks long, and we would plan for it to be while school is out of session. And beyond the 4-week closure, they would, the contractor would be able to have flaggers with like 1 lane alternating traffic just during the daytime if they were doing work in advance of the closure for up to 2 weeks, or work after the closure for up to 2 weeks. We would incorporate innovations into our design, including what we call prefabricated bridge units. That's the picture in the upper left corner of the screen. It's the 2 girders would be connected together and have the concrete deck poured on top of them in a fabrication plant, and then they would be brought to the site on a truck and set in place. Also, we would plan to have precast abutments, which is in the bottom left picture. So the piles would have to be put into the ground, but then they can cast these abutments again in a precast facility, be brought to the site on a truck, and be set in place with a crane. So time is really reduced in regards to formwork and setting reinforcing steel and waiting for the concrete to cure itself. So we save a lot of time using these options. So this is our preferred traffic control option. It's the safest option. Traffic will be away from the construction site for those 4 weeks, which also means it's going to be the shortest construction duration, and it's the least expensive option and has the longest life expectancy with the least amount of maintenance long term. And this would be the detour. So end to end is 32 minutes or 23 miles, but through detour would be 27 minutes. This is on state roads, so even if there are local bypasses, we don't have them shown here. So it would be Vermont 44 to Vermont 44A to US 5, and then Vermont 131 and back to Vermont 106.
Did you guys take consideration of emergency services during this?
We will have to discuss that with the emergency services. Yeah. Yes.
That would be me.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, and a lot of that is put into the contract. The contractor has to be communicating with emergency services as well as beforehand, but also during closure.
All right, so where are we on the project schedule? So we've kind of combined our scoping and conceptual design phase into one. Typically, we get a project and it's a 5-year development process. Obviously, this project got some funds post-flooding event in fall, winter of 2023, so we're, pretty much at like 1 year into this project. We're at the preliminary design phase. We proposed our bridge replacement here. We're hoping to move forward relatively with that design and develop our preliminary plans and design and finalize that this fall, winter. And then it goes into permitting. This bridge is going to need various permits, a flood permit. There may be some archaeologically sensitive and historic areas that need permits. We don't have wetlands delineated at this point because our resource ID process is usually as part of the scoping phase, so that's being done right now. So there may be other environmental resources we need to consider. we have to get rights for, but other than that, we're pretty much within the state right away here. So we're hoping that right away is not a super lengthy process, but it takes time. And then, all things go smoothly, we would have contract plans and a project out for advertisement in, late fall of 2025 with construction in, the summer of 2026. Now, I would say certainly accelerated and, you know, funding and spending can change by the day. So, you know, we're hoping that that summer 2026 comes to fruition, but certainly there could be changes in budget that may impact that duration. So, and I believe that's all we have for our presentation. So there's a link, and I'll share this presentation with the select board, and they can post it how they want. There's also a project website that this presentation has a link to at the top, where we'll have this presentation located there, as well as a fact sheet and the various plan milestones. So right now it has conceptual plans there, and preliminary plans will be posted there once they're completed. So now we can open it up to questions if it's good with these guys.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We'll take them one at a time and let everybody ask a question once, and then we'll move around the room. Go ahead, Bill.
I don't want to comment on the proposed design yet. I just want to mention as a footnote, and maybe you're already aware of this, but after I read, if you go 3 miles upriver to South Reading, I don't know if the slope of the river is the same, but it's pretty steep, and during both floods, that river was really moving. And it branches off in South Reading, and after Irene, 2 of the 4-foot culverts got just jammed with all kinds of rocks and debris. A lot of flooding occurred. Those 2 were concrete bridges by the town pretty quickly. When the second flood happened last summer, none of those bridges got jammed with anything. The water flowed just fine. Just FYI.
Yep,
It was that without any hydraulic modeling.
yes, I understand that, but you just mentioned that the slope of the stream is much steeper up there. That's part of the reason why, and you opened it up.
I don't know that it's any steeper. Yes, absolutely. They did open significantly by a factor of times 3.
I went upstream about 1.5 miles and the river changed to a different river altogether. You started getting glacial till, outcrops, very cobbly stream bed material up there, and it's magnitude different. It's very steep up that section of the river.
Except that in the second storm, the most recent one, the 4-foot culvert on the main river, right by Pucker Brush, got totally jammed with rocks and logs, and that blew out both sides of that. So just keep in the back of your mind, the town got those things fixed, and their design worked fine and was battle tested in future floods, and that was all done in like 7 months.
So what was the original structure size versus proposed?
I think they're about 4-foot culverts. Alan would know this better than me. And what's in there now is at least 3 to 4 times larger.
That's why. That's why.
Yeah, I mean,
So they're going from a small structure to a much larger structure, but my guess is there's not adjacent property owners that would potentially be impacted by such a large increase in a span.
Well, I beg to disagree, but I don't want to debate it. I'll let others ask questions.
Yep.
Yeah, you talked about increasing the hydraulic capacity, the new proposed bridge, by increasing the span and raising the clearance to the water level.
Yep.
What is the percentage increase in the hydraulic capacity of the new proposed bridge compared to the existing bridge?
I don't know if we have a percentage. What I would say is by raising the grade in the low beam, we're looking to get about a foot more of freeboard from that hydraulic event between the low beam elevation, and then we're also increasing the span by about 10 to 15 feet. So all this is preliminary design, so we have not dove into a full-fledged final design. So I can't comment on how our final design would be at this point. We're hoping, based on past projects, what we feel we can do for a span configuration.
And I think a lot of people have commented that the clearance under the bridge over the years has decreased because of silting under the bridge, and the obvious solution to that would be to dredge under the bridge, which is not difficult to do, but that action is generally, I understand, prescribed by state regulations that prevent work in the river. What's the possibility of getting that changed such that the bridge or the area under the bridge could be dredged annually to stop it closing up, which seems to happen?
Sure. Yeah, so what I would say is A&R and our river management engineers have jurisdiction over what is done in the river. There is right of way in this area that leads me to believe that the bridge, the state has gotten the rights to periodically dredge here. Who goes in and gets that permit, I don't know, but the problem is you'd also have to dredge both outside the right of way, upstream and downstream for it to be an effective process. But that's something, as we move further into this project, that we will try to get.
So who should take that initiative then?
I've reached out to A&R to have that conversation.
Sorry, we should raise it with A&R?
I'm starting to have that discussion with them now.
You are?
On how we do that for our state asset. Now, this is a much larger project in the sense, how do you go about dredging on, say, downstream and upstream outside of our right of way? I don't know how they would, you would have to have the town or property owners put in a request, I believe, to dredge.
Well, I think we're the relevant property owner because we own
Correct.
property either side of the
Yes.
river, both upstream and downstream. But it's obviously in our interest to see that.
Fair.
that
Do you know if your
prop?
does your property?
I've been told anecdotally
Yeah.
that 20 or 30 years ago, the clearance under that bridge was 7 or 8 feet, and today it's 3 or 4 feet.
Sure. Yep. It's possible. I couldn't, I would imagine with a waterfall transporting sediment drastically down and then kind of depositing on a
But
much.
Is that something the town should push A&R to consider and investigate?
I don't know how much the town can do because it is a state structure with adjacent property owners. So, like I said, I will look into that and I'm not going to leave you hanging.
You as V-Trans, I mean,
Correct.
your interest is basically
The structure.
getting the traffic to go over the river.
Correct.
It's only incidental to you whether the bridge causes flooding either side. I mean,
We certainly like to not hear that it does, but there are times we can't meet certain flood events and we accept that it will get
You're
overtopped.
focused on basically keeping the bridge open and so traffic can cross it. But,
Yep.
I mean, the town's interest is to stop the flooding in the vicinity of the bridge.
Right.
So there's a slight difference in priorities there, I think.
Fair. Yeah, there's not a straight cut answer here. It's unfortunate that there's so many communities in these floodplains and there isn't a, direct answer how we handle these large scale flood events that are now happening much more regularly.
Sarah?
I think there's a different question at play here. Working with the government is exceedingly complex. And knowing what the steps are, what the process is, who has the right to ask whom about what is something that has befuddled this town throughout all of this conversation. And getting a straight answer, does the property owner approach Agency of Natural Resources?
Yep.
Does the town approach natural resources? Does the property owner approach natural resources and transportation? Now, who are the players? What is the sequence? And can you answer that? And if you cannot,
Yep.
which might be possible,
Sure.
you might not be able to, who has the answer for the procedure and process?
Yep, no, I don't disagree. State government is definitely not always the
I
easiest.
worked in the government for a little
Yes.
while.
So A&R is the jurisdiction that controls our rivers, and I believe the river management engineer here is Scott Jensen.
That's correct.
However, who triggers that, I don't have a definitive answer for you, because the town can help to push that along, but they don't own the asset and they don't own any of the adjacent properties. So it's more of the state needs to address it on the bridge end, and the adjacent property owners have to address it on private property.
I would just respond to that.
Yeah.
Frankly, one of the things I found to be effective sometimes is when it's confusing and we can't get a consistent answer. If we call the commissioner's office for the relevant departments and relevant agencies, often they'll work their way back down the chain to be able to provide the answers.
Sure.
And so it might be time for this community to figure out who is going to make that strategic phone call.
So the chief engineer, I believe, was here, correct? Jeremy Reed. And I believe he did direct the town towards Scott Jensen at one point. I think if I looked at the previous
Correct.
meeting minute.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead, Marcy.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, I'm sorry, I'm from the Holler Foundation. My name is Marie Brand.
Okay.
I'm gonna just ask you, I apologize, to sort of repeat yourself because I'm gonna study your graphs in closer detail. But the one where you were explaining about the sedimentation buildup, do I understand correctly that the sedimentation buildup is like downstream in our hayfield, and so dredging in that area would help ameliorate buildup of sediment towards the bridge?
I would say that the main channel, we're on the topic of dredging, so you would need to maintain the main channel.
Right.
So what's happening in that hayfield where that deposition occurred, over time a new channel is going to form. You
And
can see
that's
signs
good
of
that
it
it's
now.
spreading now,
Yes.
rather than being confined.
You actually see a lot of something called a head cut, and you see a vertical wall in your field, and what's going to happen over time is that's going to form a new channel.
Right.
So this is a very complex problem because we're in a different phase of the geomorphology or fluviomorphology model. So we went from we're in a widening phase, and you're actually going to start getting a new braid or a new channel access in that field. So when we start going on a topic,
Which is helpful.
well, it would, that's up for debate from a river scientist perspective, absolutely. But maybe not from a flooding standpoint, because the old channel might be abandoned because it's gonna get deposited material in that. So the existing channel where you get low flow through right now,
Yeah.
you might get more deposition in that section of the channel, and then a new channel is gonna form in the hayfield.
Right.
And that's gonna be the new channel.
Right.
Because the channel, rivers change over time, and what you're seeing is a very long process pan out in a very short period of time during these very drastic storm events.
But if we've got the room to let the stream choose its course.
And I would
then
direct that question to more of the river management engineers.
To this lady.
Because they, like Corey said, they have jurisdiction of what can and cannot occur.
Right.
In the flood zone as well as actually.
But, so I guess my main question for you was just an understanding of where, the remediation of sediment buildup is the most effective. Is it under the bridge? Is it downstream?
I would say that, a lot of material stacks up upstream.
Yeah.
So I think there's two deposit areas.
Yeah,
It's the
there-
hayfield and then it's directly
Yeah,
upstream.
it's a twofold problem. I would say the upstream channel, if it is maintained, you would allow more of the woody debris to flow
Right.
through. You cannot mitigate the sediment deposition, that's what I'm telling you, without removal. You need a sediment management plan.
Right.
And it needs to be a long enough area with a long enough reach, a length of the river, where that you can allow deposition to occur within that section until you remove it out again. Because that would allow you to have more hydraulic capacity from a clear water standpoint in the river. A wider bridge, I can make this bridge 1,000 feet long. The river's gonna deposit in that, it's gonna be like the hayfield scenario. If we
Yeah.
removed all the properties to the east or north and south of that bridge, and we put a suspension bridge there. Let's just be stupid about this in the sense of hypothetical scenario. That river's going to change, it's gonna meander, it's gonna deposit and form new channels over time. Right now, what we're trying to do is maintain the existing thread.
Right.
And there are solutions, it's just more of, you either move out or you're gonna have to manage the sediment.
Right.
That's where we're at with this bridge.
Thank you.
this is probably a dumb question, or it's gonna have a simple
There's no
answer.
such thing as a dumb question.
Well, I'm guessing there's an engineering reason why we can't have something like a drawbridge, or something that if there's surges, since that's gonna happen here and elsewhere, I guess there's a reason that we can't do something like
I'll defer
that.
to Corey on that.
Yeah, you don't usually see a drawbridge in this type of environment. I guess it's possible, you're saying in terms of, so that it can flex with a,
All I know is that it seems like every 30 years or maybe every 2 years, we're gonna have an event like this, and I just wondered if there was a way that, that when there's a sudden surge that, I don't know, it could.
I think the idea with a new structure is that it would be resilient to those sudden surges. I don't know that a suspension bridge would prevent anything. I think it would get probably wiped out just as easily with material coming.
I see.
Yeah, and they're typically longer spans, yeah.
Okay.
I'd just like to add that if you remove the bridge right now, take it out, material's going to stack up in that section of the bridge.
Okay.
I just want to make that very clear.
Okay. All right.
How the woody debris moves during that time, I can't tell you. It's not going to cause a dam at the bridge. It may be able to flow more freely through the channel, but sediment's going to stack up in this section of the breach because of, again, beating dead horse at this point, but it's a slope issue. There's just not enough slope to transport the sediment.
All right, if there's no more questions, I want to thank you folks for coming down tonight.
One more.
Sorry.
Just one more question. Yep. Well, just following up on what you said about even if the bridge wasn't there, you would get sediment deposition at that location.
Yes.
But is there a more holistic approach where you actually go further upstream and downstream and do stuff to the river channels upstream? I imagine particularly that it would reduce the problem at the bridge in the junction with the river where the river crosses 106.
Yep, I will explain this as simple as possible. If you widen a channel, you would expect the flow depth to decrease because the channel's so wide, right? But because you're doing that, you're removing power to remove sediment. And vice versa, if you make it too narrow, you're not gonna have enough room for the sediment to move, so you're gonna get stacking either way. And then there's an optimum width in which sediment will move. We can design an optimum width if we have the right slope. We don't have the right slope.
No, but I don't think that was my question. I'm saying, is there something you could do higher up the river to slow down the velocity of water so this sedimentation occurs somewhere where it's not going to do damage?
I think you'd have to eliminate the waterfall.
You would have to, a lot of your source material to this river is the bed as well as bank erosion, and you would need to stabilize the upstream section of the river.
But so
it would be a very long, very expensive project.
And that's again outside the ambit of VTrans.
Correct, and that's how you
is that so whose ambit would it be? Would it be A&R? Or no one's?
I think we're talking like thousands of feet.
Miles.
Yes, miles. We're talking about a whole entire river corridor that would have to be realigned, redredged. It would involve A&R, multiple property owners. I just don't think.
Just we happen to own a lot of the river
Yes.
upstream of the bridge or the banks, both sides. So, and there's no buildings on.
I don't know that I've ever been asked whether you could reconstruct a river from
Yeah. I mean, we're involved in a project in Massachusetts, at North Adams, where the Housatonic River flows right through a museum campus. And there's a channelway that was designed by the Army Corps of Engineers, I believe, 50 or 60 years ago. And North Adams, the town of North Adams, and the museum there are now engaged in a project to basically redesign the whole river corridor for a distance of 2.5 miles. Exactly, that's what I'm saying. They have adopted a holistic approach to this, not just looking at a point problem, but looking at the whole big picture.
Sure. Do you know if, I don't know what the funding source behind that potential is? It a town or state
It's a
project?
state project.
Or is it a private endeavor?
No, it's a state, it's a
Okay.
state project, yeah.
Kevin? Sorry, sir.
Yeah, Kevin, have you ever designed flood chutes, or have you ever managed to have ice jam data in your designs?
Sometimes there's data. Sometimes there's ice jam data, yes, in our designs for tailwater effects. Now, for a flood chute, that is something that we don't do from a transportation side. That goes to more of, because you have to incorporate that into private land, exactly. We stay within the right of way. I would say if you were to do, you would have to get that, if you were to try to mitigate the sediment transport upstream or remove bank erosion in particular, because they'll have bank erosion occur, you would need to not work with us for that. I would say that.
All right, I'm going to take one more, and then I'm going to shut it down because we are expanding way off topic here. We're talking about projects that would take many years, probably longer than some of us are going to be alive. So I want to stick to the bridge at this point in time. So if you got a question on the bridge, fine. If it's something that is 2.5 miles away, then we need to shut it down. So Jane, you had your hand up.
That's okay. I was just gonna ask, I'm a little confused that who has jurisdiction, A&R? Because everything, it seems like they tie our hands to do anything in the water.
I would say A&R.
For a river project of that magnitude, certainly.
Absolutely.
And I think that's their intent, to tie your hands a little bit.
This lady over here had her hand up.
Mine was a comment about conversation, so it's not a question about the bridge.
All right, I think that I want to thank you folks for coming down.
Yeah, we appreciate it, and I know this is certainly a complex project. And
It is very complex, and I think that we're talking about a project to fix something in a couple of years, hopefully for the long term. And some of these projects we've talked about may be very well and necessary, but I'd leave it to you to estimate how many years, we're looking out there to redredge the brook 2 or 3 miles upstream. And then you still got the falls.
yeah, that's a problem.
Basically, once you get to the falls, that's as far as you need to go, I think, upstream.
Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah,
Yep.
and certainly if we need to come back at some point during the design process, we can certainly come back and we'll try to reach out to A&R and get some better answers for some of these.
We will certainly stay in touch.
Sure.
And fortunately or unfortunately, Lisa and I are going to be with Scott Jensen next Tuesday, and we'll just see what he's got to say.
Perfect.
We'll
There you go.
tweak him a little bit and see what's going on.
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all for coming and your comments.
That was excellent, thank you.
So, well, a lot of people are digging. The length, if you want to call it the length of the thing, they're increasing it by about 10 feet, 10 feet wider opening.
Correct, it's around 10 to 15 feet, also enabling the screening more. So in some areas it's longer than 15, or roughly 15, and others are shorter. So I think the average around.
One of the gentlemen said that he increased the size of the bridges. So we went from about 20 feet to 28 feet. We did go over it.
Okay.
Not a lot, but it was not, it wasn't
Tends to always be well, it's, I'm gonna say, just for you guys' knowledge,
When you talk to Scott Jensen, you might throw out Maple from time to time, and that's kind of like the width of the natural channel before you access the public. Simple as that. And typically when you put in new structure, you're putting in big structures, because that's the width that we allow to transport 3 to 3
still vote on the MERP?
We won't kick you two out right now.
Okay, do you need us to stay for any reason?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No.
So what we were trying to look at is, we were trying to do a flat bottom superstructure, so no beams would get unfortunately, there's span limitation there, so we have a shorter span for the shallow structure, so we're trying to meet that as the best possible.
I'm one of the abutters to the bridge, and, I'm on the south side.
Now everybody
I know.
Excuse me. Hey, folks. Hey,
Thank you, Kevin.
But I'm wondering, do you have,
we've still got some business to attend to, so could you take your visitation outside, please?
like, sort of so close to the center of the road that I think you're going the other way, but just to see where it's gonna go as far as being in front of it?
It's gonna go fast now. It's clearing right out. It's gonna go fast now.
Done.
Yep. Zoom.
It's like a matter of maybe a foot push.
All right, folks, I want to get to,
It's actually wider, and it gets truncated at the edge because it's narrower, so just the
Please.
bridge is getting wider. I can share something with you.
Yeah, I'd love to, only because we are like literally.
Yeah, why don't you?
You say we have another agenda item?
I thought I did, but I'm not sure.
Right next to the bridge, I got hit by the flood, so
Right
I'm
next
like,
between the drive and the.
yeah.
I'm going to elect them to the select board in a minute.
So I'm just trying to figure out when
All
you
right.
do this, am I
Hey
gonna
guys,
lose
with
my
all due
Hey.
respect, we still have one meeting to have.
No?
No, it's getting wider the other way.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the
We
other.
have more agenda items.
Yep.
Thank you.
Corey, thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
I have this for the pointer.
I knew we needed a traffic cop tonight. We have gotten down, other than highway status, and there's not a lot to report on that. We're down to one employee right at the moment. As you know, we've lost an employee, and then the other full-time, part-time employee, if that's what you want to call him, had a death in family, so he's gone. So we're down to one here for the next week or so, maybe two. But we're continuing on because we still got grants to do, one up by above your place and one on Town Hill and then Grasshopper Lane. So we still got some work to do, so we're looking at contracting that work out. The MERP implementation grant. Brian, I think Bill left you high and dry, so.
You tagged me and ran out as quickly as possible, so, first I'll just say actually on the roadside, like, we're patient, of course, on, like, you know, there are situations that arise, whatever needs to happen on Jane Road, where we are, like, whenever it happens, it's fine, like, as to the MERP grant, so just very briefly, the Municipal Energy Resilience Program MERP grant is an opportunity for us to submit a grant to get up to $500,000, but it's based on what budget we project to get weatherization upgrades, insulation, heat pumps, maybe batteries, maybe car chargers. We've been working, the Energy Committee's been working with each of the sort of key stakeholders at the different town buildings to understand, based on the audits, what they might want. And then our intent is to submit a grant. There's no match required, so there's no obligation financially from the town. And we've actually learned that we're in pretty high standing because we have a decent energy burden in the town. So there's a reasonable expectation that we would get some, if not both, of things that we request. We're working closely with Mark to do that.
In order to submit the grants, which are due on September 20th, we're requesting that the select board would designate Callista as the designated person to submit on behalf of the town. And Bill and I will work with Callista to kind of and Martha to get everything together, talking also to the building stakeholders to kind of make sure we're putting in what people are happy with. So it's really specifically just asking for you to designate Callista to be able to submit.
Just a question.
Sure,
So
yeah.
this grant is going through Mark, because Martha's involved. Is that the reason that she's involved, is because it's going through the Mount Scottney Regional?
Well, yes, sort of. So it's coming from BGS, State Buildings and General Services. That's who's administering this program. And they've asked that we work with our Regional Planning Commission on all of this. And so really, she's been providing support to us on navigating this whole process, and the planning commissions have been providing feedback to BGS about what ought to be or not included in the grant application, etc. So
you have input to that?
As to what goes
what's included and what isn't?
In the grant?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we will write it. Yeah, Martha will see it and has advised us on what she's learning through what she's hearing from BGS and is helping us tailor the grant. But in the end, Bill and I, working with each of those building stakeholders, will put together the budgets and the language. It's not a ton of text, and it's a pretty fast process. They need to move this money or they're going to lose it. It ultimately there's some tether to ARPA in there that I don't even understand, but grants are due the 20th of September. I'm not gonna have the dates exactly right, but about a month later, we'll find out whether or not we got it. And then the town needs to make sure that they're happy with the language about what they're proposing. And they want all the funds committed by December, and they have to be spent by the end of 2026.
Okay, so the town gets input to it after they know they've been accepted?
The town's input at that point is just about, these are the terms of the monies, are we okay with that or not, basically.
Well, I don't want to do it. Do you want to do it?
I do not. I'm really happy that
Oh.
you're listening to doing it. So yes, I'm on board.
Great, excellent.
For Callista to be your submitter.
Great.
You want to make a motion?
I should have said Callista's agreed to do this should you decide to.
I do know you've spoken with
We have a date on the 17th, and Bill and Callista and I are going to sit together for 2 hours and get it done. So,
Well,
if you're okay.
I will second the motion because she's going to be the one to keep track of the funds.
Absolutely.
And spend the funds and provide the documentation to get the funds.
Exactly.
So I think it makes sense.
Right, great. Good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Fabulous. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll let her know, or you will let her know.
I do have one thing for other. Does anybody have anything they want to bring up under other?
I have a question. Can I bring it up under other?
Sure.
Okay. The banner that we want to put up for the fall festival that I asked you if I needed a permit.
Yeah.
Where can we put that? Like, can it just go anywhere on the side of the road, or?
Well, people do that, Jane, but we have a piece of property down here where the Indian Stones are.
Okay,
And we have a piece of property up by the fire station.
perfect.
So you can kind of get both ends of the village, this
Okay.
side of Route 44 to catch that traffic.
Yeah,
And then down by the Indian Stones, it's a 3-week duration or something like that.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And you don't care how big it is?
Yeah, I think if
It's gonna block the sun of the,
No, don't affect the immediate case.
If you
okay,
stick to
it'll
the
be
town
modest.
property, then there's no issue. If
Okay,
you start to put it on private property, somebody might, but we don't normally have any issues like that, so
okay,
you should be good.
thank you.
Do you have some sort of design proposed at this
Yeah,
point? Is it
yeah,
like 6
yeah.
or 8 feet wide on either?
Something like that.
Okay,
I
so
have
it's
to
not
go
like going
within
across the
the-
road?
No, I would
It's
have
just-
loved that, but no, it's gonna be like this.
Yeah, I think you'll find Kevin, you might be able to speak to this, but the fire department used to put up a sign for their old home days. It was, I don't know, 3 by 6 or 4 by 8.
Yeah.
That used to be right there by Route 44.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dave?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can get on the list to meet with Jason, the watershed guy, to have him take a look at what's going on and see if there's a way we can deal with some of the debris that's built up and caused a dam which has diverted this water into the bank where it slid.
You're talking Scott Jensen?
Oh, Scott, I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah, he's the watershed guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Is there a way I could meet with him and have him come up?
Sure, I can give you his number. You can call him individually.
That'd be great.
And he'll set up, he's extremely busy, so don't get alarmed if he gives you like a 2 or 3 week delay. But, yeah, I can give you his number and his contact.
But you say he's gonna be here Tuesday, right?
He'll be here Tuesday.
But you won't have time to do that probably at that point.
He probably won't have time to go up and look at the area that you're talking about, but he might be able to give you a date or
That'd be
time frame.
Yeah, yeah, I would definitely meet him.
We will be on Bailey's Mills Road for probably an hour or so.
Yeah.
From 9:30 to, I'll say 11. And if you want to stop down, I'll introduce you. You can go from there.
Okay, that's on Tuesday.
That's Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'll do that.
Take a video on your phone and bring it with you.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Actually, Lindsay had it. She took a bunch of photos of it.
As well.
Okay.
Did you have other questions about any of that?
No, but you know all about the culvert and all that sort of stuff, so at some point you'll put us on your list.
That culvert is broke off. That's why it's.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's
it's
now
not great
facing
shape.
down because a huge poplar tree uprooted and snapped it out of the culvert. So, I mean, it's fine right now. The water's low, but if we get another flood, I don't know what's going to happen. So, which is the same thing up above where the major slide is. I mean, right now there's no issue at all. It is sliding a little bit. You can watch it go down the bank and watch it sloughing off. But another big storm and that water's just going to go right into the bottom of that bank. So.
Yeah, that culvert is sort of slowly sinking as well.
Sure.
The conversation about culverts triggered in my mind, Robert, that 2 or 3 months ago you had mentioned having some communication with the state that sounded maybe promising around my favorite culvert on Brown Schoolhouse. Have you heard anything more?
I can only guess what your favorite culvert on Brown Schoolhouse might be. Would that be the one up by Jim Stewart's?
Yeah.
Yeah, I expect so. Yes, as a matter of fact, we have the grant. Has been approved just this past week for putting in a box culvert up there, much like what we did on Grasshopper, only smaller. So that will be on the horizon as we go forward. It's nothing that's going to happen this year. It may not even happen next year, but the grant has been approved.
But it's been funded. So.
Yeah, well, we have to put in 20 or 40, 10 or 20%, so, but it will happen.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other? I got one here. The Elks Club in Windsor sent me this Patriotism Week proclamation.
Oh.
And they would like the town, they're trying to get all the towns in the area to sign this, and I'll read it. The Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks, through its constitution, is a patriotic order, and whereas the order promotes the ideals that the citizens of this nation live in freedom, won through the great sacrifices and many tribulations which have provided the foundation for a free, prosperous, and independent life, and whereas we realize that each generation must work to maintain this freedom, otherwise through carelessness or indifference, the rights and liberties enjoyed may vanish, and whereas it is fitting and proper to recognize this freedom and to honor the nation which provides it now, therefore I, the town of Reading, do hereby proclaim September 9th through the 15th, 2024 as National Patriotism Week. During this event, urge all citizens to join with the benevolent and protective Order of Elks in expressing gratitude for the privilege of American citizenship with appropriate celebrations and observances. Kind of wordy, but you have a problem if we join this?
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Does anybody in the audience
No,
have any
no,
problems with that?
Good cause.
Okay, all right, we can fill this out afterwards. That's what I have.
Patriotism, politics, and religion really don't mix.
What's that, Kevin?
Patriotism, politics, and religion really don't mix well in the video.
No, you don't
Nothing wrong
discuss,
with being
you don't
patriotic.
discuss them at Thanksgiving dinner.
I do just want to get on the record that we have discussed that we're talking about the slide on our road and the
Yeah.
possible moving of that road at some point
Yeah.
for safety issues and concerns. Certainly, it's gotten pretty close to the edge, and I'm not quite sure
Yeah, I guess
if
we're,
moving it to the wall is really going to do what needs to be done. I think it might cause more harm than
pulling stumps and things like that, might
getting
make
heavy.
a scene for it to slide, I think, disturb it.
I don't think in that particular area there is a fix.
No, there isn't.
I mean, it's,
There isn't.
I measured it on the A&R map the best I could using the GPS coordinates. I come out with 132 feet of slug. I don't know if that fits with anything you measured or not.
100 feet of what?
132 feet
of slide
from the top to the bottom. I don't know. It's not accurate, but it's a guideline. But I think a discussion with Scott Jensen about cleaning it out to prevent any further
Yeah.
undermining of what's holding what's there now would be helpful.
My biggest concern though is that is not my property. I don't know where the property lines are. It's a stream bed, so I don't know where that designated property line is.
I think first, is it Eve and Claire's property?
Yes.
Yeah. I think first, let's have Scott tell us what he thinks,
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
we can approach
But
Eve and
what's
Claire.
going on, I mean, it's an island of trees, big trees that are rooted firm enough in the ground the water didn't blow them over. But now that all those logs from above have jammed up into it, and that it's now diverting all that water into the bank, like I've seen before, so it's causing a dam, basically. So, and it's angled just right to blow it right into that bank.
There's nothing holding that anymore. So anything heavy rains that we have just continue.
I'll go up there and look at it.
We'll make sure that
Oh, yeah.
gets into the other notes.
You're right, there's no solution other than moving the road 40 feet over. That would be a solution, but
To the
again,
right.
that's not my
To
property.
the house, yeah.
But if that does go, then we are landlocked. I don't know, we can't come in Brown Schoolhouse realistically. We could in the summer, but not with our car. I think it's beautiful on a good one.
Yeah. I mean, and, people use it, so there is a concern. I mean, I certainly,
I mean, yeah, if
we've got
I,
campers up there, we've got, the biker, events that go back and forth, and
if I were
just,
driving a log truck, I don't think I would drive over that stretch of road. I mean, that would be probably just enough weight and vibration to,
and we get
There's a lot of
propane
silt under
propane
some
trucks
of
in there, so it's,
We all see what happened out in Wyoming. I think it
Have you
was,
seen it?
we need to be aware of it.
I just want to sort of, I'd rather prevent than to like
Go
have
over the
it.
second culvert.
Any other business?
What's your number? 48361.
I don't have any others. No others.
Okay, I need a motion.
Oh, my motion to adjourn.
I'll second it. Thank you very much. Thank you, folks.